New buy sell keep avoid is back for Game Week 17. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan and today we're going to be going through all of the big transfers you should be making ahead of the new game week. Let's get going. Before we get started, if you haven't done so already, make sure you check out the latest episode of the Stick to FPL podcast. The Game Week 17 episode focuses a lot around replacements for Aït-Nouri and Cunha. I know a lot of you guys are looking to replace these guys in your FPL team, so I think this podcast will be very valuable to you in particular. Go check it out using the link in the description or search Stick to FPL on your favorite pod platform. And as always, guys, this video will be split into two sections, the first of which we will be exploring the players that you should be keeping or selling. Which one of these players that you have should you be removing from your team and which you should be keeping. After that, we will be looking at which players you should be replacing them with our buys and some players you should be avoiding as well. Players will be tier listed with the players at the top, the high priorities, and the players down below, the players you maybe don't want so much. And as always, we're going to start off with the forwards in the keep and sell categories, and we got our keeps up here first. And certainly there are a few forwards I would be very keen to keep. The first of which is Wood. He's very good value for money at 6.6 million right now, and I think fixtures are turning for him a little bit. Now, his data isn't amazing over the past 6 game weeks, but actually over the last 4 game weeks, it's not been so bad. He did have a disallowed goal as well last game week, which I think has influenced things a little bit. So overall, I still think he is very worth keeping ahead of some pretty nice fixtures from an attacking point of view. Brentford, Spurs and Wolves in the next 4, I think, are all games that he is capable of scoring in. Nicholas Jackson, another player I would not be looking to lose right now. He's in pretty good form at the moment, and even though I don't love all of the fixtures coming up for him, Chelsea are probably right now the best attack in the league, so you do trust them to get goals no matter the opposition. And João Pedro has been a little disappointed recently, but pound for pound for his value for money, he is still going to be a really useful option ahead of 2 nice fixtures against West Ham and Brentford. I'd be looking to keep him for these fixtures, especially as he is a penalty taker, just like Chris Wood. Ollie Watkins is one to monitor. Now, obviously, he has suffered with some injury issues over the past couple of weeks and not been fully in the squad in the first 11, but I do think he is going to come back into the team against a Man City team who genuinely have been one of the worst defenses in the league recently. Watkins is putting up some really nice data, although he hasn't always been finishing his chances. If he can start converting his 3.65 XG into more goals, then we're going to see more goals, particularly against the likes of City, where he could thrive if he does start ahead of Duran, who is maybe coming for his place in that starting 11. Haaland, another one to monitor. With the fixtures turning very soon, I understand why some people might want to keep him, although if you do sell him, you can make some big upgrades to your team. Kai Havertz has got some decent fixtures coming up with Arsenal. However, his data is not great, so monitor him. He is a player that you could think about replacing as well. Certainly not a player I'd be looking to buy. And Solanke, well, even when Spurs score a boatload of goals, Solanke is still not involved. Just 1 goal in the past 6 game weeks, with 2 assists in there as well from a very, very low XA, actually. So he's a player who I would be very, very cautious around right now, particularly with 2 tough fixtures against Liverpool and Forest away. Could be a good opportunity to jump off, but he's not quite as much of a sell as the true sells. And the true sells in this category who are absolute priority, remove them from your team, starting off with Welbeck. He has been injured recently. He has been suffering a little bit there, and with lots of fixtures coming up for Brighton and maybe his age playing a factor as well, I'm not sure how much game time he is going to get, even in these nice fixtures against West Ham and Brentford. Of course, that would change if he is cleared fit. If he's cleared fit, he can bump up into the monitor category, but for now, I think he is a sell. Delap is also going to be unavailable for this next game week, so therefore, he's a pretty easy sell. After Newcastle, he faces Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, and then Fulham, so the fixtures are too tough, really, to be worth keeping him. So he is going to be a sell. And Cunha, recently we got the news today that he is going to be suspended, most likely. He does still have a chance to appeal, but after some post-game antics in Game Week 16, which involved a bit of a scuffle with a member of the Ipswich staff, it looks like Cunha is going to be suspended for Game Week 17 at the very least. It could even be more game weeks beyond that. So even though he isn't technically suspended yet, it looks like 99% chance that he is going to be suspended for at least one game week. So for that reason, he is going to be a sell. After Leicester, the fixtures do start to get a lot tougher for a long time for Wolves. So I think he's a pretty nice player to just replace in your team. Take the points you got in game week 16 and move on. For our midfielders, Saka is going to be the #1 keep. 2 blanks in a row, but I wouldn't let that put you off because he has looked really good in the last 2 game weeks. Particularly last game week, he created plenty, had a few decent opportunities to score as well. Pickford had a really, really good game, which kept Arsenal out. But looking at these future fixtures, Crystal Palace away is okay, but after that, I back Arsenal to score multiple goals in each of game week 18, 19, and 20. So he's going to be a really crucial player to keep within your FPL team. Penalty taker, set piece taker, that's all very useful when you play for Arsenal. Rodgers is also going to be a keep. I know a lot of people are making sideways moves to other cheap midfielders right now. I like the cheap midfielders that we will be talking about later in today's video, but I like them to free up budget, and selling Rodgers to a Ahmad, Enzo, Iwobi, or whatever, that doesn't actually free up any budget in your team, so I'm not actually sure it is worthwhile doing, especially as Rodgers, there's nothing wrong with him. He's not a bad pick. He's been doing absolutely fine for his price tag, maybe underperforming a little bit with only 1 goal in his past 6 game weeks. But the fixtures are okay. I would be fine to play him against Man City at home. We've got Brighton and Leicester coming up as well for Aston Villa. I don't think there's any problem with keeping Rodgers in your team. I think he's a one to keep, really. There's no reason to remove him, in my opinion. I don't think any of the other super ultra cheap midfielders are enough of an upgrade on him. Kaldu Mitoma is also in the keep category. I know he's blanked a few times, but his data is reasonably good. He's had 5 big chances to score in his past 6 game weeks and has created 12 chances for his teammates. Pretty nice indeed. West Ham and Brentford are the next 2 fixtures, and I think there's certainly opportunity for Mitoma to come back in at the points. Monitor Semenyo, he was substituted early in game week 16, but apparently there was just a little bit of tightness, no real injury there, so no massive worry. The bigger worry is he has been blanking, but his data is still pretty good. 21 shots with 1.22 XG. This is pretty decent for a cheap midfielder, and I'll be fine to keep him for these upcoming fixtures. But he is not quite an absolute keep. He is in the monitor category because I do recognize that we have to maybe give up on a player at a certain point, and maybe that time is edging sooner and sooner. Luis Diaz is also going to be in the monitor category, but if I'm totally honest with you guys, everyone from here is a player who I would probably be willing to sell if the right replacement came along. If you've identified a player, or if you maybe identify a player in this video that you'd really like in midfield, I'd kind of be pretty chill with selling any of these guys, including Luis Diaz. But assuming Luis Diaz is benched in the League Cup in the midweek, I think that means he will start against Spurs. And if he puts up similar numbers that he did against Fulham, well, he actually looked pretty good in that game, and I think he could potentially get something from the Spurs game. We know Spurs have been a pretty weak defence since they have lost so many key players in defensive areas. Smith Rowe has a great fixture against Southampton, but unfortunately he is just not putting up the numbers. He has been a little bit rotation risk with some early subs as well. So I am a little worried about Smith Rowe despite the good fixture against Southampton coming up. He's just not been showing it really recently why he would be a good FPL asset. And Brennan Johnson, rotation risk with 2 tough fixtures coming up. He is a monitor, but again, another player I would be more than willing to sell. The players I would be very willing to sell are Garnacho, Rashford, and McNeil. Garnacho and Rashford not even in the Manchester United squad in game week 16, so there's clearly something going on there with Amorim selecting his favourites. These guys look like they might not be part of those plans. So 2 rotation risk over this Christmas period, I would just look to remove them. And McNeil with a potential injury here and some really tough fixtures coming up, particularly if you're an attacker. We've got Chelsea, Forest, and Bournemouth in the next 4. City, maybe we include them as well, but probably not. I would just, in general, this Everton team is not scoring goals, and therefore McNeil is not very useful. He is a player who I would be more willing to sell for another cheap midfielder. For our defenders here, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk top the list. I know they have a tough game against Spurs, and maybe the Fulham game was disappointing for each of those, but after that, these Liverpool defenders are going to be super, super useful. We know Trent has that attacking threat, and so does Virgil van Dijk from those corners as well. He's a set-piece machine. And Spurs, interestingly, are a team that are very prone to conceding goals from set pieces. If Trent is taking them and Van Dijk is potentially scoring them, then that's going to be very, very useful. And I think these guys might surprise you even against a very, very strong Spurs attack. But certainly after that, these are players we want to keep. And controversially, I'm also going to include Gvardiol in the keep section. At this point, if you still have him, I don't really see too many reasons to sell him. He has got a huge amount of attacking threat. This Man City defense has been poor, but they are always on the brink of improving, particularly with Kovacic. They're not going to stay bad forever. And the fixtures after Villa include Everton, Leicester and West Ham. These are really nice opportunities for clean sheets, even if you are this Man City team. Robertson's in monitor. He has been putting up some questionable performances, but a lot of people think he is going to be suspended for game week 17, so I thought I would just clarify this one. So Robertson, because he received a red card within the game of game week 16, therefore, he is going to serve his suspension in the League Cup because Liverpool are still in the League Cup. Now, there are some other players such as Daniel Munoz. He collected 5 yellow cards over the course of the season so far, which gives him a league suspension. So even though Munoz does play in the League Cup, he can't serve his suspension in the League Cup because he got his suspension through yellow card accumulation and not a red card within the game like Robertson. So that is the key difference there between the two players, and that's why Robertson is not suspended. Assuming he comes back into the Liverpool starting lineup against Spurs, he is going to be on some set pieces, and after that, the fixtures are pretty decent. If you think he's going to continue to play, then that would make him a keep. Pedro Porro is going to be a monitor. This is a good jumping off point if you do want to switch to another defender. Pedro Porro, I think, is okay, has a bit of attacking threat. The fixtures are good after 17, but I'm not sure I'd be willing to spend 5.6 million on a Spurs defender right now. There are other defenders with similar attacking threats playing for better defenses. So here's a monitor. Mazraoui is also a monitor. That is dependent on his injury status. Digne is also a monitor. He has a slight rotation risk, and the next few fixtures are not great. Although long term, I think Digne could become a useful FPL asset right now. Well, in the future, I guess. But I don't think he's an absolute must-sell, but Digne would be close to a sell for me if you desperately need a new defender to play in Game Week 17, because a rotation risk Digne against Man City is probably not what you want to deal with ahead of this game week. But let's move on to the sells. Aina is here against Brentford away and Spurs at home in the next two. Really tough fixtures for him, and at 4.9 million, just not convinced he's good value for money. I don't really understand how he's managed to get this many owners, but this is where we are. There's been no attacking returns in the last 6 game weeks. He's barely been getting any points. Lots of 1s and 0 pointers from him. Pretty poor, really. 13 points in 6 game weeks. Not quite good enough, is it? So I think I would just sell him. Cucurella is going to be suspended for this game week, and after that we have Fulham. Some okay fixtures. I don't know if I trust the Chelsea defence enough to spend 5.2 million on a defender who is of no use to us in game week 17. So I would be looking to sell. Everton is Chelsea's best fixture in this run. And Ait-Nouri, another player suspended. We know this. Leicester is the good fixture, which he will miss. After that, fixtures much tougher, although to be fair for Wolves, it doesn't need to be a tough fixture for them to concede goals. They've been one of the worst defences in the Premier League. So straight up sell for Ait-Nouri, and we'll look to find some decent replacements for him in the buy section of the video. And before we get to the buys and the avoids, of course, make sure you do drop a like. Massively helps out the channel, and do subscribe if you want to follow along with those FPL tips every single week. Let's keep moving. So no real surprise here to see Isak as the #1 transfer target among forwards for this game week, and I would try and do my best to get Isak in your team if possible. If you have a cash cow player, I don't know, maybe that's a Bruno or a Mbermo, someone like that, where you can downgrade that player in order to upgrade one of your forwards to an Isak, then I would do it. The only 2 players I probably would not do it for would be Wood and Jackson. I would keep Wood and Jackson. Any other forward, I think, is worthwhile upgrading to Isak ahead of this Ipswich game. Because Isak, not only is he in great form and putting up great XG numbers with 3.31 in 6 game weeks, but he's also a penalty taker and the talisman of his team. And the way that is being reflected on the pitch is his assist threat is actually genuinely pretty serious. 1.41 expected assists with 3 assists in his past 6 game weeks. These are really, really nice numbers. So he is just providing everything, and there are some decent fixtures to come. You'll be more than happy to play him in each of the next 4 game weeks. Some people are even suggesting Isak could be a captain option for game week 17. Chris Wood is here as well. He plays Brentford next. We spoke about him a little bit already, but I think not only is he a keep, but also a player to buy. If you can't quite afford to move a Cunha to Isak, for example, there's no way of you doing that. You'd have to take too many hits. You've got no player to downgrade. Well, I guess would be the next best thing. Certainly, if we're looking at players to keep, don't sell your Liverpool defenders. Don't sell your Arsenal defenders. Don't sell Jackson. Probably don't sell Wood. Don't sell Palmer, Saka, or Salah. There we go. But any other players, I think you can downgrade in order to upgrade someone to Isak, if that makes sense. So for some people, they'll be able to do that. For other people, there will be no options, and therefore maybe Wood is the solution, or maybe you don't have free transfers. You only have 1 free transfer. You don't want to take a hit. Wood. There you go. Nicholas Jackson is also on here, but we did speak about him already. But another player I would genuinely think about buying this week if Isak or Wood are out of your budget, or maybe you already have them in your team. João Pedro and Raul Jimenez would really occupy the super cheap options to go for this week. If you want to go cheap as your forward replacement in order to upgrade another area of your field, then I would go for one of these guys. João Pedro is putting up the better numbers and is probably more nailed on than Raul Jimenez at this point. But both players have reasonably good fixtures in the immediate term, and I think both would do a very good job for your FPL team for their price. Remember, you can't expect Haaland and Isak results from these 5.5 million forwards. FPL doesn't work like that. But both penalty takers, very useful. Cody Gakpo is a little rotation risk, but if you fancy taking some risks here, then actually his numbers are really good. For me, he's a monitor. I don't think I would take the chance on him personally, but the fixtures are good, his numbers are good, and there is potential for some points here. Højlund is another player to monitor. I'd like to see a little bit more from him. I'd like to see some more goals from him. I'd like to see improved numbers before I trust him, but certainly he is another forward on the watch list, but he's not quite an avoid. Wissa, however, is. Now, I really liked Wissa whilst he was in form, but over the past few game weeks, his numbers have dropped off a cliff. He is barely shooting, barely getting good chances to score. He's playing wider in a lot of games as well, depending on who else is on the field with him. And the fixtures aren't that great. We've got Brighton and Southampton in there, of course, but Forest and Arsenal are tough fixtures in the next 3. So I don't think I would buy Wissa at this point. I think that the time for buying Wissa is probably in the past. Wouldn't buy Vardy either at that cheap price tag. Stick with João Pedro and Raul Jimenez. Vardy struggling to get 90 minutes at the moment, and his numbers aren't great either. And of course, Cunha, with that suspension looming, I just would not buy him. So on the fit midfielders, we've done something interesting today. Thank you to those who suggested it last game week, but we've removed Palmer and Salah from the buy section because I'm hoping by this point, most of you guys have these players already. These guys are buys every single week, and we know that by now. Now, some of you might not have Saka, however, so I have included him on the buy list, but just so we can fit some more players on this list, Palmer and Salah are not on the buy list. even though they are 100% buys. But we can make some other suggestions here. Ahmad and Gordon are really nice picks to go for. Ahmad is my favourite cheap midfielder to go for right now, with Bournemouth, Wolves and Newcastle in the next 3. He's in such good form at the moment, and he looks like he has nailed his place down in the team. At 5.2 million, that's a bargain. And Gordon has some good fixtures to come as well. His shots are pretty high here. 15 shots for a midfielder is no joke, and he has been underperforming his XG a little bit with 3 big chances. Plenty of creativity for Gordon as well, with 13 key passes. Monitor Enzo. I think last week was a week I preferred to go for Enzo because Everton away, I don't love this fixture, but he has been in fantastic form recently, and it doesn't look like his role in the team is going to change anymore if Chelsea do continue to perform so well with him as a crucial part of the attacking play. Iwobi, I'm not so keen on as maybe some other people are. The fixtures are decent, but he has been a huge overperformer this season. 0.94 XG and 3 goals scored. I don't think he can replicate that. If you're doubtful about Enzo, who has significantly better numbers than Iwobi at a cheaper price, then you should be very, very doubtful around Iwobi, despite the slightly better fixture in Game Week 17. Iwobi is just not really an FPL pick for me, but I understand he is one to monitor. He has produced some moments of magic, so maybe some of you guys are still considering him. Bruno, not keen, playing in the central midfield position, playing pretty deep, and a penalty against Man City I don't think suddenly makes him a better player. I don't think anyone would be really thinking about buying him if that penalty was not awarded. I certainly prefer Ahmad if we're looking for value for money picks. And Mbermo, his numbers have improved a little bit over the past 2 game weeks. However, 6 shots and 1 XG in 6 game weeks is not quite enough to justify that 7.6 million price tag. Diogo Jota is back with a bang, but I think it's a little too soon to be speculating on his minutes. So he's going to be an avoid, but a player we might consider in the near future as he improves his fitness. Maybe next week against Leicester, if he gets another rest against Spurs, we could go in on him once more. Maddison, little rotation risk, and the next 2 fixtures being tough put me off him a lot. And Madueke, I'm not sure if he's going to play in Game Week 17 when Neto is back. I think Sancho certainly made a better claim for a starting 11 place in the subsequent game week. So Madueke is going to be an avoid for me due to that rotation risk. Defenders next, and it's pretty simple. If you don't have a double Arsenal defense yet, get it. Arsenal are just the best defence in the league by some margin right now, and the numbers really are backing that up. So if you don't have Gabriel in your team, I would endeavour to get him into your team. 9 points last week with the clean sheet and 3 bonus, and we know the attacking threat he has from set pieces. If we want to call Arsenal a set piece merchant team, then Gabriel's got to be in your team, hasn't he, really? And Timber is maybe a second Arsenal defender to go for, if not Raya. I want Gabriel, and then I want one of Timber and Raya. That would be my priority for my defence and my double Arsenal defence, I suppose. Robinson is probably the best cheap option to go for right now, as he gives you an immediate great fixture against Southampton at home. And aside from Chelsea away in Game Week 18, Fulham have some really good fixtures. We know Robinson has some creativity. He's got 3 assists in the past 6 game weeks. Has been an overperformance, but we know he does have a decent amount of creativity when compared to some of these other defenders, and there's enough good fixtures where he can definitely provide some attacking impetus as well as some clean sheets in what is a pretty decent Fulham side. Hall and Kirkes are players to monitor. Not super keen on their fixtures, to be perfectly honest, but all in all, they are pretty decent value for money picks, but I do prefer Robinson if you want something right now. Ideally, if you can hold off 1 more week before making a defender transfer, I would prefer Daniel Munoz, but he is going to be suspended, so Robinson, Hall, Kirkes might have to do for you. Colwill is on here as well. Very good fixtures for Chelsea and a cheap price tag. However, no attacking threat and a tiny bit of rotation risk puts me off Colwill just a little bit. But you could get some results here from him he is a boring pick. Saliba is never going to be my favourite Arsenal player to own in the defence because he doesn't have attacking threat. He's taken 3 shots all season, and they were in the 2 game weeks where Gabriel was out and he was a little bit more important from the set pieces. Outside of that, he's just not the set piece target. He was pretty fortunate with 2 goals with his 3 shots, and I can't see that continuing. So Gabriel, Timber, Raya, these are the players I prefer for your Arsenal defensive assets. Although Saliba, as an Arsenal defender, is never going to be an avoid. The Forest defenders, however, are avoids. With these next 2 fixtures, I would not want to be touching these guys. Brentford away and Spurs at home. Milenkovic has scored twice in the last 2 game weeks, but you'd have to be really lucky for him to continue that streak. He's not like a superstar striker, but he is a decent aerial threat, and I do prefer him to Aina at 4.6 million. But regardless, I wouldn't buy either. And Young, well, maybe not so young. These fixtures, not good enough. I would be looking to avoid any Everton defenders right now. And very quickly on goalkeepers, Raya, absolute keep. I would keep Sanchez as well because of the good fixtures. Kelleher is a sell now that Alisson is back. And Pope, with his new injury, putting him out for the next month, is also going to be a sell. If I'm looking for a new goalkeeper, I think I'd go premium. Raya or Alisson, who can probably wait 1 more week, would be the guys I'd be going for. And Pickford with his poor fixtures and Sells with his poor fixtures would be the goalkeepers to avoid. Of course, guys, if there's any other players we did not mention in this video, let me know in the comment section and we will rate them a buy, a sell, a keep, or an avoid. I'm sure there's a few more players you guys want to talk about, so let me know in the comment section. But aside from that, make sure you drop a like, do subscribe, check out the Stick to FPL latest podcast episode, which uploaded today, using the link in the description, and I will see you tomorrow for yet another video. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.